Human gets arrogant alien diplomat pregnant for revenge. She's absolutely furious. Commander Jack Reynolds leaned against the translucent barrier of the Aquarian Council's underwater palace, watching exotic fish dart through the vibrant coral formations outside. The blue-green glow of the alien ocean filtered through the massive glass walls, casting everything in an ethereal light. His worn tactical armor felt out of place among the sleek, ornate architecture of the diplomatic complex. Admiring our superior aquatic engineering, human, or just daydreaming about your primitive mud planet again? The mocking voice belonged to Ambassador Nurala Tavin, her orange skin practically glowing under the ambient lighting. Her white-gray headtails twitched with barely contained disdain as she approached, her form-fitting orange diplomatic suit hugging curves that would be attractive if they weren't attached to the most insufferable being in the galaxy. Just wondering how a species so technologically advanced could produce someone with such poor diplomatic skills, Jack replied, straightening his posture. The other diplomats nearby pretended not to listen, but he noticed several sets of alien ears perking up. Nurala's gray-blue eyes narrowed. At least my species didn't nearly destroy their home world before stumbling into space like drunken infants, and yet here I am representing that infant species at the Galactic Council, Jack countered, adjusting one of the many pouches on his tactical belt. Must be frustrating for you. The Aquarian Grand Minister floated toward them, his translucent tentacles pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. Ambassador Tavin, Commander Reynolds, the council session begins in 10 minutes. I trust you've both reviewed the trade proposals. Of course, Minister Nurala said sweetly, her entire demeanor transforming. I have prepared extensive notes on the Taurian mineral rights dispute, as have I. Jack added, pulling a datapad from one of his pouches. The Grand Minister nodded and drifted away, leaving them alone. Again, I've seen your kind of preparation before, Reynolds Niala hissed once the minister was out of earshot. Our Earth barely qualifies for council membership. Your species is nothing but muscle-bound brutes playing at civilization. Jack felt his jaw tighten. This was the third time this week she'd publicly belittled Earth standing. The constant mockery was wearing thin, especially since Earth had sacrificed so much during the Proxima conflict to protect council worlds, including Nurala's home world of Auroras. You know what, Ambassador, I think we should work more closely together, Jack said, suddenly an idea forming. Nurala's headtail stiffened in surprise. Excuse me, the Frontier Outpost mission needs representatives from both our worlds. It would show unity to the council if we volunteered together. She laughed, a musical sound despite her personality. You want me to spend 3 days on a remote outpost with you? How desperate for companionship are you, Commander? Not at all. I just think it would be beneficial for both our worlds if we demonstrated cooperation, unless you're afraid you can't handle working with a primitive human for a few days. Her eyes flashed with competitive fire. I've negotiated peace between the Born hives and the collective. I can certainly manage babysitting one human for a diplomatic mission. Excellent, Jack said, hiding his satisfaction. I'll inform the council of our joint volunteering. As they walked toward the council chambers, Jack felt a flicker of guilt about his motivations. The Frontier Outpost was notorious for its isolation and tendency to force cooperation between even the most hostile diplomats. He wasn't proud of wanting to teach her a lesson, but after months of her public ridicule, something had to give. What he didn't anticipate was how spectacularly his plan would backfire. 3 days later they boarded the sleek diplomatic vessel bound for the Frontier Outpost. Jack had spent the journey reviewing mission parameters, while Nurala pointedly ignored him, working on her own datapad across the cabin. Will be docking in 20 minutes. The pilot announced over the comm. Wonderful, Nurala muttered, 3 days trapped with a human in the middle of nowhere. My career is truly reaching new heights. Jack sighed. Look, we both know this isn't ideal, but we're representing our worlds. Can we at least try to be professional? She set down her data pad. Like how you professionally manipulated this assignment to force me into close quarters with you. Don't think I didn't realize what you were doing. Commander Jack had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. I thought some time away from the political theater might help us understand each other better. There's nothing to understand. Your species is young, impulsive, and dangerously unpredictable. The only reason you have a council seat is because you're useful in combat, and your species is arrogant, condescending, and so convinced of their superiority they can't see when they need allies. Jack shot back. The tension between them was palpable as the ship docked at the outpost, a floating structure hovering above a gas giant's atmosphere. The facility was smaller than Jack had expected, with just enough room for the essential diplomatic functions and living quarters. Ambassador Twain, Commander Reynolds greeted the outpost Director, a small insectoid being welcomed to Frontier Outpost 7. The local representatives will arrive tomorrow. Tonight we have prepared a traditional welcome ceremony. The ceremony turned out to be a small gathering with local delicacies and drinks. Jack noticed Nurala reluctantly sipping a glowing blue liquid. Careful with the Aurelian brandy, or he warned, it affects different species differently. I'm quite familiar with intergalactic spirits, Commander, she replied dismissively, taking another larger sip. Unlike humans, my people have been part of galactic society for millennia. Jack shrugged and turned his attention to the outpost director, unaware that the evening was about to take an unexpected turn that would change both their lives forever. As the evening progressed, Jack noticed a subtle change in Nurala's demeanor. The sharp edges of her personality seemed to soften with each sip of the glowing Aurelian brandy. Her head, tails usually stiff with disdain, now swayed gently as she moved. You should slow down, Jack suggested, approaching her after she'd consumed her third glass. That stuff is potent. Are all humans such tedious warriors? Nurala asked, but her usual venom was missing. Instead, her gray-blue eyes held a curious gleam as she studied his face. You know, for a primitive species you have surprisingly symmetrical features. Jack raised an eyebrow. Was that almost a compliment, Ambassador? Merely a scientific observation, she replied, but a slight orange flush spread across her cheeks. Your species' genetic diversity is interesting. The outpost director had long since retired, leaving them alone in the small reception area. Through the viewport, the swirling clouds of the gas giant created a mesmerizing backdrop. Perhaps we should call it a night, Jack suggested, noticing how Anala swayed slightly. Always giving orders, Commander, she said, her voice softer than usual. Is that how humans court each other, with commands and control? Jack felt his pulse quicken. I wasn't aware we were discussing courtship rituals. We weren't. She moved closer, her head, tails twitching in what Jack recognized as a sign of interest among her species. But I've always been curious about humans. Your kind burst onto the galactic scene so recently, yet you've made such an impact. Not all of it positive, but according to you, Jack reminded her. Nurala laughed, a genuine sound that surprised him. Perhaps I've been harsh in my assessments. She reached out, her orange fingers hovering near his face. May I? Jack nodded, unsure what she intended. Her fingers lightly traced the contours of his face, a traditional Auroran gesture of curiosity. Your skin is warmer than ours, she murmured. Higher body temperature. Efficient. Is that approval I hear? Jack teased, finding himself enjoying her touch more than he should. The brandy talking, perhaps, she admitted, but didn't pull away. On Auroras we're taught that humans are dangerous, unpredictable, but there's something compelling about that unpredictability. Jack caught her hand in his. And on Earth we're taught that Aorans are cold, calculating, and arrogant, are we not? Her eyes sparkled with mischief. You certainly are, he said with a small smile, but maybe there's more beneath the surface. The air between them seemed to charge with electricity. Jack was acutely aware of how close they stood, how the ambient light played across her orange skin, how her form-fitting diplomatic suit emphasized her alien yet familiar curves. We should really get some rest, Jack said, his voice rougher than intended. Always the responsible one, Nurala murmured, but she didn't move away. What if I don't want to rest? Warning bells rang in Jack's mind, but the Aurelian brandy he'd consumed, though less than Nurala, had dulled his usual caution. What do you want then? Her head, tails curled in what he recognized as an expression of desire to explore these cultural differences more thoroughly. Jack knew he should step back, maintain professional boundaries. This was exactly the opposite of what he'd intended when arranging this mission, yet he found himself drawn to her, fascinated by this glimpse of the woman beneath the diplomatic armor. Cultural exploration is important for diplomatic relations, he heard himself say. Nerela's laugh was low and musical indeed. And I have always been a dedicated diplomat. She led him toward her quarters, her movements graceful despite the bride's influence. As the door closed behind them, Jack knew they were crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed, but in that moment neither of them seemed to care. The night passed in a blur of discovery and connection, their usual hostility transformed into something neither had anticipated. Cultural differences became points of fascination rather than conflict, and for hours they forgot about being representatives of their worlds, becoming simply Jack and Nurala. Morning arrived with harsh clarity. Jack woke first momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. The events of the night before rushed back as he saw Nurala sleeping beside him, her orange skin contrasting with the white sheets, her head, tails relaxed in slumber. Stars above, he muttered, carefully extracting himself from the bed. What had he done? This was the opposite of professional conduct. He'd wanted to teach her a lesson about respect, not this. Nirala stirred her gray-blue eyes, opening slowly, for a moment confusion clouded her features, then recognition and horror. You, she said, sitting up abruptly and clutching the sheet to her chest. This cannot have happened. I believe it did, Jack replied, already gathering his scattered clothing multiple times. If memory serves, this isn't funny, Commander. Her head tails went rigid with distress. Do you have any idea what this means? An Auroran diplomat and a human military representative. The council would have a field day. Jack paused in dressing. No one needs to know. We're both adults. It was a lapse in judgment. A lapse. Her eyes narrowed dangerously. Is that what you call it? What would you call it? He challenged. She opened her mouth and closed it again. A mistake, one that will not be repeated. Agree, Jack said, though a part of him felt strangely disappointed by her declaration. We still have 2 days of this mission. I suggest we focus on our diplomatic duties and pretend last night never happened. For once, Commander, we are in complete agreement, Nirala said coldly, though he noticed her head tails twitching in what appeared to be confusion rather than anger. As Jack left her quarters, he couldn't shake the feeling that his plan for revenge had backfired spectacularly. He'd wanted to teach her humility, not create a diplomatic incident, or worse, forge a connection he hadn't anticipated. The arrival of the local representatives couldn't have come at a worse time. Jack stood at the docking bay, his posture military straight, as he watched the sleek vessel approach. Beside him, Niella maintained a careful distance, her orange complexion slightly paler than usual. Are you feeling all right, Ambassador? Jack asked quietly, noticing how she pressed a hand to her midsection. Perfectly fine, she snapped, though without her usual fire. The brise after effects. Nothing more. Before Jack could respond, the airlock cycled open, revealing 3 representatives from the neighboring Trellin system, tall, willowy beings with iridescent skin that shifted colors with their emotions. Ambassador Tabane, Commander Reynolds, the lead Trellian, greeted them, his skin pulsing a formal blue. I am Delegate Pax. These are my associates, Delegates Mira and Kel. Welcome to Outpost 7, Jack replied with practiced diplomacy. We're honored by your presence. Nirala stepped forward, her diplomatic mask firmly in place despite her discomfort. The Galactic Council values this opportunity to strengthen our alliance with the Trellin system. As they escorted the delegates to the conference room, Jack noticed Nirala subtly pressing her hand against her temple twice. She paused, taking deep breaths before continuing. The negotiations began smoothly enough. The Trillians were interested in establishing trade routes through their sector, and both Earth and Aurora stood to benefit from the arrangement. Jack found himself impressed by Nirala's skill. Despite her apparent discomfort, her arguments were precise, her knowledge of interstellar commerce extensive. The proposed route through the Ignis corridor would reduce transit time by 17%, she explained, displaying star charts on the holographic projector. Delegate Pax's skin rippled with thoughtful green. But the Cygnus corridor borders Vaughn territory. The risk is minimal, Jack interjected. Earth's 7th Fleet maintains regular patrols in that sector. We can guarantee safe passage. Nirala shot him a look, not of irritation but something closer to surprise. For once they were working in tandem rather than opposition. Midway through the presentation, however, Nirala suddenly paled dramatically, her head tails going limp, a sign of distress Jack had never seen before. If you'll excuse me for a moment, she said, her voice strained. Without waiting for a response, she hurried from the room. Ambassador Tivine seems unwell, observed Delegate Mira, her skin shifting to a concerned purple. She's recovering from our welcome ceremony, Jack explained diplomatically. If you'll excuse me as well, I should check on her. He found Niella in the corridor outside, leaning heavily against the wall, her breathing labored. What's happening? He asked, genuine concern overriding their awkwardness. Nothing that concerns you, she insisted, but her legs buckled. Jack caught her before she could fall, supporting her weight against him. This isn't normal, Brandy. After effects, he said. You need medical attention. What I need is for you to return to the negotiations, she hissed. Though she didn't push him away. This will pass. Jack hesitated, torn between diplomatic duty and genuine concern. At least let me help you to your quarters, she relented, allowing him to guide her down the corridor. In her quarters, she sank onto the edge of her bed, her head tails trembling slightly. This has been happening since this morning, she admitted reluctantly. Waves of dizziness, nausea. Jack frowned. Could it be some kind of reaction between the brandy and your physiology? Possibly, she conceded. Though I've consumed Aurelian brandy before without such effects. An uncomfortable silence fell between them. As the unspoken possibility hung in the air, it couldn't be. Jack began. Don't even Suggested Nurala cut him off sharply. Our species are completely different. Biologically incompatible. Are you certain about that? Jack asked carefully. Has there ever been a documented case of human Auroran? No, she said firmly. It's impossible. Our genetic structures are too dissimilar. Jack wasn't convinced. Impossible or just unprecedented? Nurala's head tails twitched in agitation. It doesn't matter. You should return to the negotiations. One of us needs to represent our interests. The delegates have agreed to a recess until tomorrow, Jack said. They were concerned about your health. Wonderful, she muttered. Now I've compromised our diplomatic standing as well. Jack sat beside her, maintaining a respectful distance, for two people who supposedly despise each other. We keep ending up in each other's quarters. A reluctant smile tugged at her lips. A diplomatic anomaly. I think we work well together, Jack ventured. When we're not trying to one-up each other. Nyla studied him, her gray-blue eyes searching his face. Perhaps, though I still find your species frustratingly unpredictable, and I find yours maddeningly superior, he countered with a small smile. But maybe that's not the whole story for either of us. Another wave of dizziness seemed to hit her, and without thinking Jack reached out to steady her. His hand on her arm sent an unexpected current between them, a reminder of their night together. You should rest, he said, his voice rougher than intended. Yes, she agreed, though neither moved to break the contact. The negotiations resumed early tomorrow. Jack knew he should maintain the professional distance they had agreed upon, yet something kept him rooted in place. Concern for her well-being certainly, but also a growing fascination with the complex woman behind the diplomatic facade. Jack, she said softly, using his first name for the first time. What happened between us was a mistake. He finished for her. We agreed on that. Yes, she said, though her head tails curled in a way that suggested uncertainty. A mistake. As Jack finally rose to leave, he couldn't shake the feeling that their mistake might have consequences. Neither of them had anticipated consequences that would test not only their newfound diplomatic cooperation but their fundamental understanding of what was possible between their species. After Jack left her quarters, Nyrila couldn't shake his unsettling suggestion. Biologically incompatible, that's what all the scientific literature claimed about humans and Aurorans, yet her symptoms felt disturbingly familiar, reminiscent of stories she'd heard from female colleagues who had experienced early-stage pregnancy. Ridiculous, as she muttered to herself, pacing the small room. Completely impossible. Still, scientific curiosity and a growing sense of unease drove her to the outpost's medical database terminal. Her fingers hovered over the interface before she finally entered her search query: cross-species reproduction compatibility. Most results confirmed what she already knew. The vast majority of sentient species couldn't interbreed due to fundamental genetic differences, but a small subsection caught her attention: anomalous reproductive compatibility in humanoid species. The article detailed rare cases where species with seemingly incompatible genetic structures had successfully produced offspring. The key factor appeared to be something called adaptive genetic resonance, a phenomenon where certain genetic structures could temporarily align under specific conditions, such as exposure to psychoactive substances with DNA-altering properties. Nurella read aloud, her head tails stiffening in alarm, including Aurelian brandy. The brandy, renowned across the galaxy for its potent effects, contained trace elements that could temporarily alter cellular receptivity in some species. According to the article, this could theoretically create a brief window of reproductive compatibility between otherwise incompatible species. Stars above, she whispered, sinking into her chair. The possibility she dismissed as absurd suddenly seemed terrifyingly plausible before she could process this information. The outpost communication system chimed. Ambassador Tavine, came the outpost director's voice. There's an urgent transmission from the Galactic Council for you and Commander Reynolds. Composing herself, Nyala made her way to the communication center where Jack was already waiting. His concerned glance told her she hadn't fully masked her distress. Are you? He began. I'm fine. She cut him off as the holographic projection of Council Chairman Draft materialized before them. Ambassador Commander, the elderly Valyrian greeted them, his four eyes blinking in sequence. Your presence is required immediately at Council headquarters. The Taurian delegation has escalated their demands regarding the mineral rights dispute. Your negotiations with the Trillions must be postponed with respect, Chairman. Jack said, we've made significant progress here. Couldn't another representative, the Taurans specifically, requested both of you drive? Interrupted. They were impressed by your joint handling of the Proxima conflict treaties. A transport will arrive within 6 hours. Drake out as the hologram faded. Nurila felt a fresh wave of dizziness wash over her. Jack moved quickly to Steady her, his hand warm against her arm. What did you find? He asked quietly. She looked up sharply. What do you mean? I know you knew, Rala, you would have researched your symptoms the moment I left. His perception was irritating yet oddly touching. I found a possibility I don't want to consider. Jack guided her to a chair. Tell me. Reluctantly she explained what she had discovered about adaptive genetic resonance and the effects of Aurelian brandy so it could be possible. Jack said, his expression unreadable. Theoretically, as she admitted, but extremely rare. The article mentioned only 3 documented cases across all known species in the last century. We should get you to a medical facility. Jack suggested one with more advanced equipment than this outpost, and announced to the entire council that I might be carrying a human Auroran hybrid. Nurala's head-tails lashed in agitation. My career would be over. The scandal would be unprecedented. Jack's jaw tightened. Your health is more important than politics. Easy for you to say, she snapped. Humans celebrate their unpredictability. My people value control, precision. This would be seen as the ultimate failure of both. So what do you suggest? Jack asked, frustration evident in his voice. Before she could answer, the outpost director entered the communication center. Commander, Ambassador, I've prepared your quarters for departure. The Trellians send their regards and hope to resume negotiations upon your return. They thanked him mechanically, both preoccupied with the bombshell that had just dropped into their lives. Later, as they packed their belongings, Jack appeared at Nurala's door. We need to talk about this. There's nothing to discuss until I know for certain, she said, carefully folding her diplomatic robes. And when will that be? The council headquarters has medical facilities. Yeah, I'll find a way to get tested discreetly. Jack stepped closer, his gray-blue eyes intense. Whatever the result, I want you to know I'll take responsibility. Nurala laughed bitterly. How noble the human warrior, accepting responsibility for impregnating the arrogant alien diplomat. What a charming tale for the council archives. This isn't a joke, Nurala. No, she agreed, her voice softening. It's potentially a diplomatic catastrophe. Jack ran a hand through his light brown hair, a gesture she'd come to recognize as a sign of his frustration. Is that all you can think about? The diplomatic implications? What else should I consider? She challenged, though her head-tails betrayed her uncertainty, curling in a pattern that signified emotional conflict. Us, Jack said simply. Whatever is happening between us, there is no us. Nurala insisted, though the words felt hollow even to her. There was one night of brandy-induced poor judgment. Jack stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. Is that really all it was? Her head tails twitched traitorously, revealing emotions she tried to suppress. Among her people, such involuntary reactions were considered embarrassingly honest. One reason Aurorans often struggled in poker games with humans. We should focus on the Tarian negotiations, she said, attempting to redirect the conversation to safer ground. Always the diplomat, Jack murmured, but didn't press further. The transport arrives in 3 hours. Get some rest if you can. As he turned to leave, Neela found herself reluctant to let him go. Jack, she called softly. He paused in the doorway, looking back at her with those intense eyes that seemed to see through her diplomatic mask. Thank you, she said simply, for your concern. A small smile touched his lips. That's what friends do. Is that what? We are now friends. I hope so, he replied, despite our best efforts to the contrary. As the door closed behind him, Nurila placed a hand on her abdomen, wondering if something impossible was growing within her, something that would forever link her to the infuriating, unpredictable, surprisingly compassionate human who had turned her carefully ordered life upside down. The Galactic Council headquarters shimmered beneath the azure waters of Aquaria Prime, its glass and metal spires rising from the ocean floor like a futuristic coral reef. Their transport docked at one of the underwater airlocks, and Nurala felt a strange sense of homecoming mixed with dread. The Taurian delegation won't arrive until tomorrow morning, Jack informed her as they walked through the translucent corridors. That gives us time to settle in. And for me to visit the medical facility, Nurila added quietly. Jack nodded, his expression serious. Do you want me to come with you? No, she replied firmly. This needs to be discreet. Dr. Len owes me a favor. She can run the test without official documentation. They parted ways at the residential wing, Jack heading to the Earth Embassy quarters while Nurala returned to her Auroran suite. Once alone, she changed from her travel attire into a flowing robe that concealed her figure, then made her way to the medical level. Dr. Len, a petite Auroran with pale orange skin and delicate head-tails, greeted her with professional warmth. Ambassador Tavine, this is unexpected. Your annual assessment isn't scheduled for another 3 months. This isn't an official visit. Naira said, using the doctor's first name. I need your discretion. Dr. Len's expression grew serious. Of course, what seems to be the problem? Narella explained her symptoms and the research she discovered about adaptive genetic resonance. She deliberately omitted mentioning Jack by name, referring only to a human diplomat. Dr. Len's head tails twitched in scientific fascination. Remarkable. I've read theoretical papers on cross-species compatibility, but there are only a handful of documented cases. She gestured to an examination chamber. Let's run a comprehensive scan. The medical scanner hummed softly as it passed over Nirala's body. Dr. Len studied the results on her holographic display, her head tails gradually stiffening in surprise. Ambassador, she said finally, the results are conclusive. You are indeed pregnant with what appears to be a human Auroran hybrid embryo, approximately 2 weeks along judging by the cellular development. Despite having suspected it, hearing the confirmation made Nirala's head tails go completely rigid. The Auroran equivalent of turning pale. That's impossible. Improbable, Dr. Len corrected. But clearly not impossible. The Aurelian brandy likely triggered the adaptive genetic resonance, creating temporary compatibility. It's a scientific miracle. Really a miracle, Nirala echoed hollowly. Is it viable? Dr. Len studied the scans. The embryo appears healthy. Human and Auroran genetic structures are surprisingly complementary in certain key areas.